The 1971 Corvette Stingray, the last roar of the classic C3. The Predator emerges. A warm summer breeze rolls across an empty stretch of highway as a long, shark-like silhouette emerges from the heat. The 1971 Corvette Stingray glides into view with the smooth confidence of an American icon. The asphalt shimmers in the distance, and for a moment, the car seems to float above it. A mirage made real, a dream crystallized in fiberglass and steel. The sweeping fenders, pop-up headlights, and flowing curves of the C3 body give the 71 Stingray an unmistakable presence. Chrome bumpers shimmer in the golden light, the fiberglass body catches the evening sun like polished glass, and the car looks ready to strike even at idle. There's an animal quality to its stance. Low, wide, coiled. The front end tapers to a point like the nose of a fighter jet, while the rear haunches swell dramatically, hinting at the power contained within. Older car lovers feel a familiar tug of nostalgia. This was the dream machine of its time. The poster car, the cruiser, the symbol of freedom and style in an era when driving still felt like an adventure. Before safety regulations softened bumpers and strangled engines, before computers controlled every aspect of performance, before the world got complicated. The 71 Stingray represents something pure, man, machine, and open road, nothing more, nothing less. A changing landscape, America at the crossroads. To understand the significance of the 1971 Corvette Stingray, you must first understand the moment in which it existed. By 1971, the American automotive landscape was undergoing a seismic shift that would change the industry forever. The carefree performance wars of the 1960s were coming to an end, replaced by a new reality of environmental concerns, safety regulations, and insurance company pressures. The Clean Air Act had been passed in 1970, ushering in stricter emission standards that would begin choking the life out of high-performance engines. Insurance companies, alarmed by accident statistics and soaring claims, were dramatically raising rates on muscle cars and sports cars, making them increasingly unaffordable for young buyers. The federal government was mandating new safety equipment, side marker lights, high back seats, improved braking systems that added weight and complexity to vehicles. And looming on the horizon was the energy crisis that would erupt in 1973, fundamentally changing American attitudes toward fuel consumption and performance. The days when gasoline was cheap and plentiful, when you could build a 450 horsepower engine without apology, when bigger was always better, those days were numbered. The 1971 Corvette Stingray, then, represents a last stand. It was one of the final expressions of the old automotive order, built before the full weight of regulations crashed down on Detroit. Yes, it had to comply with new emission standards that reduced power, slightly. Yes, it gained some weight from mandatory safety equipment, but fundamentally, it was still the same animal that had prowled American roads since the C3 generation debuted in 1968. Still low, still powerful, still utterly focused on the visceral thrill of driving. This was the last year for chrome bumpers front and rear. The last year before gross horsepower ratings gave way to more conservative net figures. The last year that Corvette could be unapologetically itself without significant compromise. For collectors and enthusiasts today, this makes the 71 model particularly significant. It's a bridge between eras, a final glimpse of an automotive philosophy that was about to vanish forever. The shape of speed. C3 design philosophy. The third-generation Corvette, introduced in 1968, was a radical departure from the angular C2 Stingray that preceded it. Designed by Larry Shinoda under the direction of Bill Mitchell, the C3 borrowed heavily from the Mako Shark II concept car that had wowed audiences at auto shows. The result was a design language that was simultaneously organic and futuristic, aggressive and sensual. The 1971 Stingray retained all the visual drama of the original C3 design. The body was low and wide, with a greenhouse that seemed to float above the dramatic body curves. The front end featured a pointed nose with recessed chrome bumpers flanking a simple egg crate grille. Above this, the pop-up headlights sat flush with the bodywork when closed, creating a smooth, unbroken surface that emphasized the car's aerodynamic intent. The profile view is where the Stingray truly reveals its brilliance. The body sides are deeply sculpted, with character lines that flow from front to rear like water over stone. The front fenders rise dramatically before swooping down and then flaring again at the rear wheels. There's a sense of movement even when the car is standing still, as if it's perpetually lunging forward. The doors are long and low, the roof dips toward the rear, and the overall impression is of a car that has been shaped by wind rather than designed by committee. The rear three-quarter view is perhaps the most dramatic angle. The haunches swell outward, creating wide, muscular shoulders that house the rear wheels. The deck lid is short, ending in 4 round taillights, a Corvette signature since 1961. The rear bumper, still chrome in 1971, wraps around the corners, protecting the sculpted body from parking lot mishaps. The fiberglass body construction, a Corvette tradition since the car's inception in 1953, allowed for these complex curves and shapes. Traditional steel would have been expensive and difficult to form into such organic shapes, but fiberglass could be molded into virtually any form. This gave Corvette designers freedom that their counterparts at other manufacturers could only dream of. The color palette available for 1971 reflected the era's tastes. You could order your Stingray in classic shades like Mila Miglia Red, Bridgehampton Blue, or Ontario Orange. More subdued options included Nevada Silver, Steel Cities Gray, and War Bonnet Yellow. The most popular choice was Brands Hatch Green, a deep metallic shade that emphasized the car's aggressive stance. Many owners opted for the contrasting white or black stripes that could be added to the hood and rear deck, emphasizing the car's length and adding a racing touch. Others chose the optional side exhaust system, which not only improved performance, but added a visual element that screamed performance, intent to anyone within earshot. The heart of the beast, engine options and performance. As emissions rules tightened and horsepower wars faded, the '71 Stingray remained loyal to its roots. Whether equipped with the small block or the mighty LS5 454 big block, it carried forward the spirit of pure American performance. The engine options for 1971 told a story of a manufacturer trying to balance tradition with an uncertain future. The base engine was the 350 cubic inch small block V8, designated the LS1. With a 2-barrel carburetor, it produced a modest 270 gross horsepower, adequate for moving the 3,200-pound Corvette with respectable vigor, but hardly the stuff of legends. This was the engine for buyers who wanted the Corvette look and feel without paying the insurance premiums or fuel bills associated with the higher performance variants. Step up to the LS5, and things got serious. This was the 350 small block with a 4-barrel carburetor, solid lifter camshaft, and performance-oriented tuning. It produced 330 gross horsepower and could propel the Stingray from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. Seriously quick performance for the era. The LS5 was the sweet spot for many buyers, potent enough to deliver thrilling performance, but civilized enough for daily driving duties. But the engine that defined the 1971 Corvette, the one that would become legendary, was the LS5 454 big block. This massive V8 displaced 404 cubic inches, 7.4 liters, and produced a thunderous 365 gross horsepower and a staggering 465 lb-ft of torque. The torque figure is particularly important. It's the force that pins you back in your seat, that breaks the rear tires loose at will, that makes the Stingray feel like it has rocket boosters instead of pistons. The 454 big block transformed the Corvette's character completely. Where the small block cars were quick and responsive, the big block was brutal and overwhelming. Mash the throttle and the front end would lift slightly as the rear tires clawed for traction. The exhaust note was deeper, angrier, more intimidating. The car felt heavier, more planted, more serious. This wasn't a toy, it was a weapon. There was also an even more potent big block option, the LS6 454, which had debuted in 1970 with an advertised 450 horsepower. However, the LS6 was discontinued for 1971, making the LS5 the top engine choice. Some enthusiasts believe Chevrolet underrated the LS5's power figures to keep insurance companies at bay and to maintain some distinction between Corvette and the full-size muscle cars that were beginning to fade from the lineup. Power was transmitted through either a 4-speed manual transmission or a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic automatic. The manual was the enthusiast's choice, offering precise mechanical control over the engine's power delivery. The shifter was positioned perfectly within reach, the clutch had good weight and feel, and rowing through the gears was part of the Corvette experience. The automatic, while less engaging, had its advantages. It was smooth, reliable, and actually helped the big block cars put their power down more effectively. In an era before electronic traction control, managing 465 lb-ft of torque through a manual transmission could be challenging, especially in wet conditions. The automatic took care of that problem, making the Corvette more accessible to a wider range of drivers. The rear end featured a positraction differential, Chevrolet's term for a limited slip unit, which helped both rear wheels deliver power to the ground. Various gear ratios were available depending on engine choice and customer preference, allowing buyers to optimize for either acceleration or cruising efficiency. Suspension, brakes, and handling, the complete package. The Corvette had always been about more than just straight-line speed. Since the C2 generation, Chevrolet had worked to make the car a credible performer in corners as well, and the C3 continued that tradition. The 1971 Stingray featured an independent suspension at all 4 corners, still relatively uncommon for American cars of the era. Up front, unequal-length A-arms with coil springs provided the suspension geometry, while a thick anti-roll bar controlled body roll during cornering. The setup was tuned for a balance between ride comfort and handling precision. In normal driving, the Corvette absorbed bumps reasonably well, though it was never what you'd call plush. Push it hard into a corner, and the suspension firmed up, resisting body lean and keeping the front tires planted. The rear suspension was even more sophisticated. A fully independent system with a single transverse leaf spring, a Corvette signature, allowed each rear wheel to move independently, improving both ride quality and traction. The differential was mounted to the frame, and the half shafts acted as upper control arms, with lower trailing arms and lateral struts completing the geometry. This setup gave the Corvette handling capabilities that were genuinely world-class for its time. Braking was handled by 4-wheel disc brakes, a feature that set the Corvette apart from most American cars of the era, which still relied on drums at the rear. The front discs measured 11.75 inches in diameter, while the rears were slightly smaller at 11.75 inches as well. They provided strong, fade-resistant stopping power, though by modern standards they required a firm pedal and some advanced planning. Power steering was standard, making the Corvette surprisingly easy to maneuver at low speeds, despite its wide stance and performance-oriented suspension geometry. The steering was quick by early 70s standards, requiring just over 3 turns lock-to-lock, and it offered decent feedback about what the front tires were doing. The standard wheels were 15-inch rally wheels with trim rings and center caps, a classic look that perfectly complemented the car's aggressive stance. They wore F70-15 white-letter tires, which provided adequate grip for the era, though they would be considered laughably narrow by today's standards. More serious performance enthusiasts could opt for wider wheels and tires to improve handling and traction. The combination of powerful engines, sophisticated suspension, and capable brakes made the 1971 Stingray a genuine sports car, not just a pretty cruiser. Road tests from the era praised its cornering ability, noting that it could hang with European sports cars costing considerably more. Yes, the ride was firm, and the cabin could be hot and noisy, but these were considered acceptable compromises for a car that delivered such thrilling performance. The driver's domain. Inside the cockpit. Slide into the low bucket seat and the cockpit wraps around you like a fighter jet. The door sills are wide, a necessary consequence of the fiberglass body construction, requiring a bit of athletic ability to enter and exit gracefully. But once you're settled in, you realize this is a special place. The seats are deeply bolstered buckets, upholstered in vinyl or optional leather. They're firm and supportive, designed to hold you in place during aggressive driving. The seating position is low, almost reclined, with your legs stretched out toward the pedals and your arms reaching forward to the steering wheel. It's a position that feels purposeful, performance-oriented, completely different from the upright, living room-like seating in typical American cars of the era. Gauges line the dash in a twin-pod arrangement directly in front of the driver. The speedometer sits in the left pod, reading to an optimistic 160 mph, while the tachometer occupies the right pod, its red line positioned at 5,500 RPM for the big block engines. Secondary gauges for oil pressure, water temperature, fuel level, and other vital functions are positioned within easy view. Everything is clearly marked, easy to read, focused on providing the driver with critical information. The steering wheel is three-spoke design with a thick rim positioned perfectly for the aggressive driving position. In later C3s, it would gain a telescoping feature, but in 1971, you took what you got. Behind the wheel, the gear selector for automatic-equipped cars sprouts from the center console, while manual cars feature a chrome-topped shifter that falls readily to hand. The center console runs between the seats, housing the climate controls, radio, and various switches. It creates a cozy, intimate atmosphere, reinforcing the sense that this is a car for two people, not four. There is technically a luggage area behind the seats, accessible from inside the cabin, but calling it spacious would be generous. The Corvette was never about practicality. Climate control was basic by today's standards. Air conditioning was optional and, when equipped, struggled to cool the large glass greenhouse in extreme heat. The heater worked well, perhaps too well, as the transmission tunnel could become uncomfortably hot on long drives. Ventilation was handled by opening the side windows or, on T-top equipped cars, removing the roof panels. Ah yes, the T-tops. This was one of the Corvette's most beloved features, introduced in 1968 and continuing through much of the C3's production run. Two removable roof panels could be lifted out and stored behind the seats, transforming the coupe into a semi-convertible. With the T-tops off and the rear window down, the Corvette became an open-air experience that captured the freedom and joy of sports car motoring. The dashboard and interior trim materials reflected the era's aesthetics. Lots of vinyl, some chrome, minimal sound deadening. This wasn't luxury in the Lincoln Continental sense. It was purposeful minimalism, everything designed around the driving experience. Some buyers found it Spartan, but enthusiasts appreciated the focus. You didn't buy a Corvette for plush comfort, you bought it for the visceral thrill of performance. Visibility was challenging, particularly to the rear three-quarters. The wide C-pillars and small rear window created significant blind spots. The long hood stretched out ahead, making it difficult to judge the car's extremities. Parking required care and attention, but again, these were acceptable compromises. The Corvette was designed to be driven hard on open roads, not navigated through crowded parking lots. The overall experience of sitting in a 1971 Stingray cockpit is one of anticipation. Everything about the interior says this car wants to move, wants to be driven hard, wants to deliver an experience. And when you twist the key and bring the V8 to life, the promise is fulfilled. Tanuri, the ignition moment, awakening the V8. Twist the key and the V8 settles into a deep, confident rumble, the heartbeat of the C3. In big block cars, there's an additional layer of menace to the sound, a deeper bass note that lets everyone within 100 yards know something serious is idling nearby. The engine shakes slightly on its mounts, transmitting a gentle vibration through the steering wheel and pedals. It's alive, breathing, waiting. Blip the throttle and the response is immediate and visceral. The engine roars, the exhaust barks, and you can feel the power waiting to be unleashed. The exhaust note is intoxicating, a blend of mechanical precision and barely controlled aggression. With the optional side exit exhausts, the sound is even more dramatic, each cylinder's firing audible as a distinct pulse. Select first gear. The shifter moves with mechanical precision, each gate clearly defined, and release the clutch. The Corvette surges forward with surprising authority even at modest throttle openings. The steering is light and responsive, the suspension firm but compliant, and you immediately understand that this is a car that requires respect and attention. Roll into the throttle progressively, and the acceleration builds in a linear, relentless wave. The big block cars, in particular, deliver acceleration that feels almost violent. The torque curve is broad and flat, pulling strongly from low revs all the way to the 5,500 RPM redline. The 4-speed manual transmission allows you to keep the engine in its power band, extracting maximum performance with each upshift. On the open road, the 1971 Stingray comes into its own. Point it down an empty highway, drop it into 4th gear, and settle into a 70-mph cruise. The engine is barely working. The exhaust note mellows to a satisfying burble, and the miles disappear effortlessly. The ride quality, while firm, isn't punishing. The wide stance and long wheelbase give the car excellent stability at speed. Find a twisty back road, and the Corvette's sporting credentials become apparent. Turn-in is sharp and precise, the independent suspension keeping the tires planted even over mid-corner bumps. There's good feedback through the steering wheel, allowing you to place the car accurately. The chassis balance is neutral, with mild understeer in normal driving that transitions to oversteer if you provoke it with throttle. The brakes require a firm pedal, but deliver strong, fade-resistant stopping power. They're one area where the Corvette genuinely exceeded many European sports cars of the era, which often still relied on drums at the rear. Threshold braking before a tight corner reveals the disc's excellent modulation and control. Push harder, and the limits reveal themselves. The tires, skinny by modern standards, start to protest with squealing and sliding. The suspension, while sophisticated, can be overwhelmed by aggressive inputs on bumpy pavement. The steering, though quick, lacks the pinpoint accuracy of more modern systems. But these limitations are part of the charm. Driving a 1971 Stingray requires skill, attention, and involvement. It's not a car that flatters mediocre drivers. It rewards the skilled and punishes the careless. Cultural impact. The poster on every wall beyond its mechanical merits. The 1971 Corvette Stingray occupied a unique place in American culture. This was the era when the Corvette transcended its status as merely a sports car and became a cultural icon, a symbol of aspiration, freedom, and the American dream. Walk into any teenage boy's bedroom in 1971, and chances were, good you'd find a Corvette poster on the wall. Usually shown in profile, dramatically lit, the C3's curvaceous body was the automotive equivalent of a supermodel. It represented everything young people desired: freedom, speed, style, rebellion against convention. It was the car you promised yourself you'd own someday, when you'd made it, when success allowed you to indulge in something impractical and purely fun. The Corvette appeared constantly in popular media. Television shows featured them as the rides of cool, successful characters. Movies used them to establish a character's personality. If someone drove a Corvette, you immediately knew they were confident, successful, probably a bit of a maverick. The car became shorthand for a certain type of American confidence and capability. Hot rod and custom car culture embraced the C3 Corvette enthusiastically. The fiberglass body was easy to modify, the mechanical components were robust and well understood, and the aftermarket quickly developed a huge range of performance parts and accessories. You could build a mild street cruiser or a full-on race car starting with the same basic platform. Racing further enhanced the Corvette's reputation. While the 1971 model year wasn't the high point for Corvette competition success, the C3 platform had proven itself capable in SCCA and IMSA competition. Privateers campaigned Corvettes with success, and the car's racing pedigree added legitimacy to its sports car claims. The Corvette also represented something specifically American. While European sports cars emphasized precision, lightness, and high-revving engines, the Corvette took a different approach. Big displacement, massive torque, dramatic styling. It was unapologetic about its size, its weight, its thirst for fuel. It reflected American values of excess and abundance, the sense that more is always better, that power and presence matter as much as precision. This made the Corvette something of an outcast in sports car circles dominated by European sensibilities. Purists scoffed at its weight, its crude, by European standards, suspension design, its focus on straight-line speed. But American enthusiasts didn't care. The Corvette was ours, American-designed, American-built, distinctly American in character. It didn't need to apologize for not being a Porsche or Ferrari. It was something different, something uniquely suited to American roads and American tastes. The beginning of the end, reading the tea leaves. The '71 Stingray represents a bridge between eras, the final years of chrome, raw torque, and open-road swagger before the automotive world changed forever. Looking back from the perspective of 5 decades, the signs of impending change were everywhere, even if enthusiasts at the time didn't fully recognize them. The insurance industry was already making high-performance cars increasingly expensive to own. Young buyers, traditionally the Corvette's core market, were being priced out by premiums that could exceed the monthly car payment. Chevrolet was quietly detuning engines, reducing compression ratios, and installing primitive emissions control equipment that sapped power and drivability. The 1973 oil crisis was just 2 years away, an event that would fundamentally reshape American attitudes toward performance and fuel consumption. The muscle car era was essentially over, with most manufacturers either canceling their high-performance models or transforming them into appearance packages with minimal actual performance. The Corvette would survive these challenges, but not unchanged. By the mid-1970s, it would be powered by strangled engines producing a fraction of the power available in 1971. The chrome bumpers would be replaced by deformable plastic units required by federal safety regulations. The raw, visceral character that defined cars like the '71 Stingray would be diluted, softened, made more palatable for a changing market. This is what makes the 1971 model so significant to collectors and enthusiasts today. It represents the last moment before everything changed, the final expression of a philosophy that wouldn't be seen again until the 1990s, when performance began its gradual return. Owning a '71 Stingray is owning a piece of that lost era, preserving a time when American automakers built sports cars that prioritized visceral thrills over environmental responsibility, when personal freedom and individual expression mattered more than collective concerns. The collector's perspective, value and desirability today. In the modern classic car market, the 1971 Corvette Stingray occupies an interesting position. It's not the most valuable C3 year. That honor goes to the first-year 1968 models and the final split-window 1967 C2. But it represents excellent value for enthusiasts who want an authentic muscle-era Corvette experience without paying top-tier prices. Several factors influence a 1971 Stingray's collectability and value. Engine choice is paramount. Big block cars command significant premiums over small block examples, with the LS5 4x54 being particularly desirable. Manual transmission cars are worth more than automatics, reflecting enthusiast preference for driver engagement. Convertibles are rarer and more valuable than coupes, though T-top coupes have their own appeal. Color matters too. Desirable period-correct colors like Brands Hatch Green, Mille Miglia Red, and Ontario Orange are worth seeking out. Factory options like air conditioning, power windows, and the AM/FM stereo add value, as do performance upgrades like the Posit traction differential and heavy-duty brakes. Condition, as always, is crucial. The fiberglass body is resistant to rust, but it can crack, delaminate, and suffer impact damage. The frame can rust, particularly in areas where moisture and road salt accumulate. Interior components, especially the dashpad and door panels, are expensive to replace. A well-preserved original car or a quality restoration will always command premium prices. Numbers, matching cars, vehicles that retain their original engine, transmission, and major components are worth significantly more than cars that have been modified or had parts swapped. Documentation is valuable too. Original window stickers, dealer invoices, maintenance records, and ownership history all add to a car's provenance and desirability. Current market values. For 1971 Stingrays range widely depending on condition and specification. A tired driver-quality car might sell for $25,000 to $35,000, while a beautifully restored big-block convertible could command $75,000 to $100,000 or more. The market for these cars remains strong, driven by baby boomers who remember them from their youth and younger enthusiasts, discovering classic American performance for the first time. The Corvette community is large, active, and supportive. Multiple clubs exist at national, regional, and local levels. Parts availability is excellent, with numerous suppliers offering both OEM and reproduction components. Restoration shops specializing in C3 Corvettes can be found throughout the country. This infrastructure makes owning and maintaining a 1971 Stingray much easier than many other classic cars. The driving experience then and now. What's it like to drive a 1971 Corvette Stingray today? The experience is simultaneously familiar and alien, comfortable and challenging, exhilarating and occasionally frustrating. It's a reminder of how far automotive technology has advanced in 50 years, but also a testament to how good these cars were when they were designed. First, the positives. The performance, especially in big block cars, remains genuinely impressive. Yes, modern Corvettes are faster, but the visceral thrill of accelerating in a 444-powered Stingray is something special. The torque is overwhelming, the exhaust note is intoxicating, and the mechanical feel of the drivetrain connecting you to the rear wheels is something modern cars can't replicate. The styling holds up remarkably well. Park a clean 1971 Stingray next to a modern sports car, and it still commands attention. The proportions are right, the details are elegant, and the overall design has aged far better than many cars from the same era. People still stop and stare. They still want to take pictures. They still ask questions and share stories about the Corvettes they remember from their youth. The driving experience is engaging in ways that modern cars often aren't. Everything requires your attention and input. The steering requires continuous small corrections. The brakes demand advanced planning. The clutch and shifter demand coordination and skill. You're constantly involved, constantly making decisions, constantly managing the car's behavior. For enthusiasts who love driving, this is exactly what they want. Now, the challenges. The ergonomics are compromised by today's standards. The seating position takes getting used to. Visibility is limited. The controls require more effort than modern equivalents. The climate control is primitive. You're either too hot or too cold, rarely just right. The ride is firm, the cabin is noisy, and long trips can be fatiguing in ways that modern cars never are. Parts of the driving experience reveal the car's age. The steering has more play and requires more input than modern rack and pinion systems. The brakes, while good for their era, lack the instant response and incredible power of modern systems. The tires, even when upgraded to modern rubber, are narrow and provide less grip than contemporary performance cars. The suspension, while sophisticated, doesn't have the refinement of modern electronically controlled systems. But here's the thing. None of these limitations diminish the car's appeal. In fact, they're part of what makes driving a 1971 Stingray special. It's a different experience, one that requires skill and delivers rewards in proportion to your ability. It connects you to an earlier era of motoring, when cars were mechanical rather than electronic, when driving was a skill rather than a convenience. The legacy lives on the 1971 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray stands as one of the defining icons of the C3 generation, a perfect blend of style, attitude, and timeless American performance that still commands attention wherever it rolls. More than 5 decades after it rolled off the assembly line in Bowling Green, Kentucky, it remains a potent symbol of American automotive confidence and capability. The C3 generation would continue through 1982, making it the longest-running Corvette design in history. But those later cars, strangled by emissions equipment and safety regulations, were shadows of the early models. The 1971 Stingray represents the C3 at its peak, still powerful, still beautiful, still true to the original vision of what a Corvette should be. Today's Corvettes are technological marvels, capable of performance that would have seemed impossible in 1971. The C8, with its mid-engine layout and supercar performance, is a world away from the front-engine big block brute that was the '71 Stingray. But there's a direct line connecting them, a commitment to performance, a dedication to the sports car ideal, a refusal to compromise. The 1971 Stingray reminds us where we came from. It shows us what was possible with the technology of the time, the values of that era, the dreams of designers and engineers who believed in building cars that stirred the soul. It's a time capsule, a survivor, a living piece of automotive history that still delivers thrills to those lucky enough to experience it. For those who own one, the 1971 Corvette Stingray is more than just a car. It's a connection to the past, a symbol of achievement, a weekend escape from modern life's complexities. It's the roar of the V8 echoing off canyon walls, the feel of the shifter clicking into gear, the admiring glances from strangers who remember when these cars were new and represented the pinnacle of American performance. The dream machine, the poster car, the symbol of freedom. The 1971 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray was all these things then. And remarkably, it still is today. That's the mark of a true icon, not just surviving history, but transcending it, remaining relevant and desirable decades after it was built. The Stingray accomplished that feat with style, power, and an unmistakable American swagger that still resonates with enthusiasts around the world. The highway stretches ahead, empty and inviting. The key is in your hand. The V8 is waiting. And somewhere out there, the spirit of 1971 is calling, promising one more adventure, one more perfect drive, one more moment of pure automotive freedom. That's the magic of the Stingray. It doesn't just take you places, it takes you back in time to an era when driving was an adventure, and cars like this made every journey memorable.